Hey, Justin, how you doing? Let's bring you to the stage.
Yeah. Hey, how are you guys
Good,
doing?
good, man. You've been on before, and I think you have some always good insight. What I love about I've been talking to Tom. He's a lawyer in the business sector, and you are actual tax accountant person, right?
Yes.
You have a whole agency, whichever you call it.
Yeah. CPA firm.
Okay,
That's what we call
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
dude.
I'm really excited. Thank you very much for having me on again, just because I've got it's 2 week old news now, but to me, it's still breaking. I was going over the opening brief after the gentleman, Nathaniel Pollock, submitted a petition to the United States Tax Court, arguing that 280 is essentially dead at this point. I don't want to overstate. I'm not an attorney. I'm an accountant. The legal stuff is relatively complicated, and I dwell in tax code for the most part. I was diving into this, and the tax courts have until January to respond to it. It really is. They're really going to have to do something here. And essentially, it presents three arguments. Two of them I've been talking about for years. The HHS, when Biden asked the HHS to look at cannabis, whether or not it was placed in the correct schedule 1 as we know it. And this, I don't want to go back through. I don't know if should I go back through and talk a little bit
You
about
should, because first,
he is.
for our viewers, it is, and a lot of our viewers, it's amazing how many of them will reach out and say that they have dispensaries. We really appreciate that. Shout out to all the people that are on a license out there, whether you're working for the industry or you're owning the industry. It's really neat that they will reach out and ask these types of things. And the first one for the non-initiated, the people that want legalization and should use this as an argument. Hemp isn't taxed like this because there are no rules there. Now, there's literally a rule from about 40-ish plus years ago now in Congress, because in Congress with the Nancy Reagan just say no, that's where this really came from,
Yeah,
was incensed. Then the tax court allowed it. There was nothing that said in your business you weren't allowed to deduct all SGA. What does SGA stand for again, Justin? Know that one.
General administration.
Selling general and administrative expenses.
Yes.
These are just your ordinary operating expenses. And a cocaine dealer got popped. They yanked all his stuff. They just seized all of his assets, and he audited them for doing it. His lawyer did and said, "Hey, I get to deduct the cost of the cocaine. I get to deduct the cost of my baggies. I had a pager. I had a little sign that says buy rock here. I had all this stuff. I was renting an apartment. I had, and the tax court said, well, there's nothing that says you can't." So they allowed it. And then Congress was incensed. And of course, cocaine is a Schedule II drug. And it was a Schedule II drug even back then. And that's why if you're conducting trafficking in Schedule 1 or Schedule 2, and then it's even more abstract the way they wrote it, it's within the meaning of Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. And that's where it was Biden said, I've directed the HHS. But then under the statute, then the HHS says, you're right. And that was August of 23, almost September of 23, where here's the 250 pages of science that says it should not be in Schedule 1. And what the legal ramifications of that is probably is in that brief you read.
Yeah, it's incredible. And there are some little caveats where they're saying that main argument. First of all, I wanted to add to your point the Edmund case where the cocaine dealer was able to take his deductions that prompted Congress to implement 280E. They haven't made any money off of that. Drug dealers don't file their tax returns. 280E, I think, for the illicit drug market up to cannabis legalization, we started a medical program, right?
sure.
They're making Congress money, right? It's insane. Essentially, once the tax code itself, this is the really important thing, and I'll get straight to it. 280E doesn't, for a lot of dispensary owners that have had dispensaries for some time now, probably have been paying lots of money on phantom income. If you read 280E by the book, take it by literally, and which a lot of accounts are still doing that. they bury their clients in tax debt right out of the gate. No
Mm.
doubt about it. Some of us have been using 471C. Some of us have been starting to use 471C, which is another kind of way to work around a lot of that phantom income. But for the most part, the industry is getting absolutely hosed.
Especially the retailers. Like I was
Especially
doing our
retailers.
models. I was
Because
doing our
they
models.
can't take their overhead costs.
The models were terrible. And this
Yeah.
IRC 280E for a retailer, we can't underscore it enough.
Right.
The difference between gross profits and net revenue before paying your taxes is amazing. Could you imagine if, and you're in retail and you are selling goods and you have a markup, and that markup is kind of where you live. And then of course you buy inventory and you can depreciate inventory and whatnot. But that markup is now all your expenses. You can't say, then I can pay the lights, the SGA, then I can pay for my marketing, then I can pay my bookkeeping, all of those administrative and necessary expenses to operate your business. No. And the delta on it was hundreds of thousands of dollars for the models that we were running. So much so that trying to run it at a loss versus a profit was it was an exercise in impossibility. You're going to sit there and you're going to nickel and dime everything to maybe make 5%. You're a grocery store versus having a profit of maybe 30 to 35%, which is substantial, because then that 30 to 35%, you really can have more flexibility with what you do. You can get into planning, reinvesting, growing your business. Your business will never grow if you pay that tax. And it's not like the IRS is going to give that money back. And then you're the honest criminal, unlike all those people selling fentanyl.
Justin, you had a great point though, that dealers don't do taxes, right? The law was built on some bullshit, just like most of the stuff that with this plant going on. Isn't the government also just losing out in this whole scenario, right? The fact that a business cannot just lawfully comply and do all the things accordingly.
There was some sort of federal regulation in which the IRS was giving their tax kind of like they get tobacco tax and whatnot. That it might be, probably would be overall more profitable for them. Nevertheless, it's there. And I think that the Congress has been historically anti-marijuana, and they're dragging their feet and getting paid while they do it. And it's absolutely devastating. Many of my clients just went out of, not my clients, but clients who had tax returns done in the past and were buried. They just closed business because how do we do business with under 280E? We can't. And there are ways. Real quick, the important part of I think the main part of this petition, which will be litigated in tax court, is kind of disputing 280E's applicability based on, and you mentioned it before, Tom, the language of 280E. In there, it says that it's not that 280E applies to businesses trafficking in a substance that is classified as a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 drug. It fits the meaning of, and I say that quotes fit there. There's emphasis in the tax code. If you read the tax code, there's emphasis within the meaning of. But there's a lot of people, what do they mean by in the meaning of? And that's Congress also stipulates, the law also stipulates that you have to write law in plain language, right? There's no debate. Within the meaning of means characteristics as proposed by Schedule 1, Schedule 2. The Congress has listed as many places in other areas of the law and in tax code. So when they said within the meaning of, and this is the twist that Nathaniel includes in this petition, and I love it. I'm still grasping with it, is that they actually intentionally did say within the meaning of, because they wanted to keep it open for other substances for 280E to apply to that may not be listed as a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 drug. You get that? You see what I'm saying? They're saying we're going to damage the illicit drug market more by saying within the meaning of, because we want to pull in other substances into Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 that are not listed as a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 drug. That blew my mind when I was reading that. It was, of course, that's why they did it. Now, it's shooting themselves in the foot because cannabis does not fit the meaning of a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substance, according to the HHS. And in the CSA, there's procedures in there in which once a substance no longer fits the meaning of the drug, then it needs to be moved. And the Attorney General, who manages the DEA, is bound to the Secretary's advice, who manages the HHS.
For the science.
All of this feet dragging and this politicking and all that stuff is all politics. It's not law. 280 doesn't apply according to law. And the fact that it hasn't been rescheduled from a Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 substance is also not law. The law dictates that the 280 does not apply, and it should have already been rescheduled by now. Because the Attorney General is bound by the Secretary to move forward procedurally with this.
It's been 2 years.
And all this stuff is all bullshit.
I think it's the 280E, because you're right. Al Capone didn't file his tax returns, or he filed fraudulent ones. That's how come they caught him. And these people that are doing this, they aren't filing that tax returns. They're laundering it through a chicken shack or a bowling alley or something, or several of those businesses. And so that's one of the reasons why they've created all these laws. And then if they found out that's what you were actually doing through the audit process, they could disallow and punish it. This is completely different than a state licensed cannabis dispensary providing, and that's the problem with this. There's a disincentive for you to comply with the law and even file your federal taxes, because the state doesn't give a crap.
Yeah.
The state's not going to yank your license if you're late on the federal taxes. They just want theirs.
No,
The state of Illinois doesn't ask about how our federal taxes are unless they're trying to prove our domicile. So for social equity purposes, if you have to prove where you've lived for the past few years, then they'll ask for your tax return.
Yeah.
The pointless law.
All the states that I know of have a subtraction. So they're like, okay, we recognize the federal government is screwing you over. We're going to make up for that by allowing these deductions that they would.
Isn't it like an act of God to get rid of 280? I mean, because this law isn't doing anything, right? This rule is not preventing anything nefarious.
We can't get rescheduling through. And so
but-
Donald Trump said a few weeks, and they looked over at shit-nosed Pam. And then Pam was like, yeah, and she nodded along. And so all these hempsters that think they're getting a pass because they've called it hemp. No, you're getting a pass because people don't care about your industry so much, they haven't caught on yet. And if you're going to hold the government getting open hostage for it, and they find out that you're openly and notoriously selling weed or chemical weed, you're gone. They got rid of alcohol 100 years ago, the whole alcohol industry. And they had lobbyists back then. And so your lobbyists aren't better than the whole alcohol industry's lobbyists 100 years ago. And the general population, by and large, when they hear hemp, they think that CBD stuff. That's it. They aren't wise to your scam.
They're
But if
getting
you want to
close,
get
though.
wise to your scam, keep the government closed because of it.
The second story, though, man, we had 39 AGs, right? 39 different states. Like, these people are realizing, right? They're like, term high hemp, right? That's something that Tom's been using for a long time. But I saw the CBD thing coming, but I never saw this intentional being cannabis, being weed thing coming. Like we're selling it to be this medicine. First off, everything I've smoked off with hemp has been trash. As an asthmatic, a lifelong, I got breathing issues and shit besides my present day cold. I've been in the hospital just because my body said, nope, lungs don't want to work no more. That's just, but I've been smoking weed fucking over 30 years. And it's not, I want to say the studies need to be there, but also a lot of stuff is put out there is wrong. To have a relationship with this plant, you have to do it in secret until we get this federal rescheduling. But champion for the hemp stuff, I mean, you're saying, so they don't deal with this because they're not considered Schedule 1, right? They're not considered, but what stops somebody from going after them? Because they're selling THC. Even though it's low dosage, no matter how much, if I pop in a pit test, I lose my job. That's a no zero tolerance thing. Thanks, Nancy Reagan. But why are they even going after the drinks? Because it doesn't mean shit. Half the time, nobody cares about people smoking the joint. What's the low hanging factor in everybody's policy, which sucks. It's infuriating. Ideas with Tom.
Yeah. And I think that really kind of, I guess in conclusion, I could spend all day talking about this. You can amend your tax returns and claim refunds. And you don't need to include 280E on your tax returns going forward. Now, you need to note it, you need to mention it, you do have to have a good accountant, put the proper disclosures in there. But you can say, based on this, alternate New Mexico top organic state versus the court commissioner of internal revenue.
Yeah.
Based on this court case, we're not going to pay tax on phantom income voluntarily until this gets settled right here. And any judge with a half a brain will look at that and be like, case closed. This is case closed right here. No doubt.
Yeah. The problem with a half a brain judge, that's
Yeah.
the tax court judges, because we were going over, and there are so many judges that I have to appear in front of, even next week, that have wonderful brains.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that. But they were elected or appointed, and then they had to run for retention. And so the tax court judges, that sounds like a public appointment. That does not sound like they had to pass a test, maybe not even be a lawyer, maybe just be a CPA or something. But those types of courts, does they have a similar type of attack that we could do from the new Looper Bright? And so we can say, hey, you don't have to give deference to this tax court's opinion on that when you appeal the tax court to the district court. So I'm assuming that tax courts are similar to bankruptcy courts in the sense that they're creatures of statute. Because the tax code is a creature of statute as well. Like, we didn't pay taxes before 1913, unless we were drinking liquor. Then we paid taxes. But
this will probably go to a district court. Within the meaning of argument will probably go to a district court. It has not been litigated in federal court yet, from what I understand. So whether they might drag their feet and this might end up getting turned over or moved to another court system. The thing is, it's not rescheduling. Just rescheduling from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 is not going to do much for the industry. The IRS is going to just say, or they're going to say, okay, it's Schedule 3. And then the IRS is going to say, okay, for that year, you don't have to, you no longer have to pay tax on phantom income, which is unbelievable. But what about all those people who have been compliant for years and years and paying millions and millions of dollars in taxes on phantom income? They have really got screwed. And there's so many people who have got screwed right now, just based on the canon provisions going to the Supreme Court argument, the within the meaning argument. Those two themselves gives you enough basis to say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to file my tax returns and pay tax on phantom income. And in fact, I'm going to amend my returns in which the statutes allow. So for 2022, 2023, 2024, if you pay tax on phantom income, you can amend your returns, request a refund. Okay. They're dragging their feet on it. Some people are getting refunds. Some people they're reducing their tax liabilities. So far, no big fallout from our CPA firm's perspective. Yeah. So at least go and get it claimed, because you need to file those returns in order to keep the statute open so that you can get those refunds. If you do nothing, then another year will close. And whether or not, depending on how everything rolls out, chances are you're not going to be able to get that money.
Yeah.
2021, over. 2020, all those years you've lost that money, and you probably won't be able to get that back. But you do something now and you get that money, you can get that money. You can secure it. Try to start getting it now.
And I think that since 23, because 23, that's when 22, that's when Biden says, I'm directing HHS. 23 is when HHS said, here's our report, move it. And so here's our report, move it. How can you, with a straight face, argue it is within the meaning of at that time under the federal? And then President Trump rescinded a lot of what Biden did.
Yeah.
Has
Yeah,
them
well,
sent to
I mean-
Schedule 3.
There's so much ammo. It's absolutely ridiculous. Something has happened. And these guys are arguing all the way back to 17. There was some shenanigans regarding the test as to whether or not cannabis had a medical benefit. And even the DEA's or the Office of Legal Counsel itself, who is part of the Attorney General's office, said that the DEA's test for medical benefits was too prohibitively narrow, meaning it was flawed to begin with back in 2016. What I would see is class action lawsuits or however they're going to do it. I want the attorneys to just go pound the government's door down and say, listen, you have screwed us over
shareholders.
illegitimately for 20 years, decades.
Especially since the Robocker-Farr Amendment. And so once the Robocker-Farr
yeah.
Amendment reared its ugly head, and it's like, wait a minute. So you're going to defund the federal government from enforcing the law for medical cannabis since 2014, but you're not going to move it for medical cannabis purposes. And then even now, for what we were hoping Donald Trump would be versus what he has not rescheduled, even though that could be very popular. Maybe he's just holding it because he's got another thing that might drop about him and he wants to get the headlines changed in a positive light toward him. I don't know. All I do know is that Mike Johnson has not sat the Democrat from Arizona, and she is now the longest unseated elected congressperson in history. So she won her race.
Yeah.
Congress has been, they're getting paid. Their assistants aren't getting paid. The security guards aren't getting paid, but they're getting paid. And so the Senate's been there, but they have not called Congress back to do their jobs for some reason.
I think they're waiting for everybody to die from SNAP benefits, and then they'll release it.
Yeah.
But
I think it has to do with something else. I think it has to do with the guy
some
who
files.
used to own an island. Yeah. Certain files.
Hey, just though, 2 questions though. The first one I forgot, but the second one, I said earlier though, you advise not to pay the 280, but you have to disclose it. Oh, and I know where the first question was. It had to do with there was a huge refund that happened like a couple of years ago. Like Truly, one of these guys got like $1 million, something crazy.
Really kicked it off. That kicked it off.
That's the first thing. And then the second thing is when you say you have to disclose to AE, does that mean you're filing as a business? You're just saying, I sell cannabis, which is Schedule 1. You're acknowledging that, even though there's no check mark. Is that what the disclosure is about 280E?
No, there's a form. And a lot of people think that there'd be trouble by arguing with the IRS. But there's a form 8275 that it's a disclosure form. It's created by the IRS so that people can argue with them, because people forget that the IRS doesn't write the tax code. It enforces the code, right? Congress writes the code. And their job is to interpret the code, and they always do it in their own favor. But sometimes code comes up and it's either there's evidence to the contrary, such as the argument that we're proposing here, 288 doesn't apply, or 471C, where they tried to close it down with regulation. And then they're like, and they did deter a lot of people, but we're like, hey, there's nothing, you don't write the tax code, you interpret the code, and there's nothing for you to interpret here. You're just trying to impose your will on us illegally. That's a different conversation, which I'd love to have another day. Essentially, they don't write the tax code. And so the 8275R is, hey, we don't agree with your interpretation. That's it. And we're going to tell you why. And it's a document that you just put a bunch of language in and you say, here's, I'm presenting my arguments, and this is why we're not paying tax on phantom income.
Okay.
And Miggy, full disclosure, I am not electing C Corp status for the LLC that will be doing this business, which is a polite way of saying, if we get audited, it's our ass and it's not the corporation's ass. And I still haven't decided if we'll take salaries and be an S Corp, or if we're just going to be a straight up pass through. But then there's, what did it say? When you don't become an S Corp, you have to pay some type of tax, don't you, Justin? Like self-employment tax or some crap?
Yeah, it's payroll. Self-employment taxes, payroll taxes for business owners. Yeah, so sole proprietorships, partnerships, you have to pay this extra tax. So you pay your state income tax, your federal income tax, and then you pay what's called self-employment tax, 15.3%. It often is blindsides people. It's another tax. You just, holy shit.
Dude,
Yeah.
taxes in general blindside people, dude. I got out of the military. I was like, I was good for
Yeah.
like the first 3 years. Then I started owing, and it was like, you know what? I got to feed my kids first. I'm not going to pay for well. And then now it got so bad, I got lawyers, and I'm getting cleared out. We're good.
S corps are good for up to a certain number net income. You get a
Shareholders.
pass-through deduction, which is really nice. 20% pass-through deduction. You take a small payroll, but your distributions are not subject to self-employment tax, which is S corps are the go-to for a lot of people, a lot of businesses,
Right.
most of business. But C corps can be good depending on what your intentions are and if you feel lucky.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's if you feel lucky.
The higher income, then C corps could feel really good. They're more tax beneficial. There's this double taxation thing that a lot of accounts who don't understand C corps will like scare their clients out of doing, but they actually can be very good, very tax beneficial if done right. But S corps are a go-to for small business for sure.
Is this what you'll be discussing at MJBiz? Oops, I'm going to add you.
There it is.
Jesus. I'm gonna copy the link and put it in the chat. But you'll be at MJBiz hosting a seminar, correct?
Yeah, I'll be there. This will be my
We'll have to redo that.
third time or fourth time, maybe third time at least talking with those folks. And yeah, it's just straight up presentation. My intention on the 11th, so it's November 11th, is to dissect this with a fine-tooth comb. And we're going to talk about, and there's so many cool twists and turns in there. For a while, 280 doesn't apply right now.
Putting that in the link right there. And so I just blasted out to the people tuning in. And then also it was in our email shoot that we had this morning before we went live. So yeah, if you guys have that link and you are in the industry interested in, because we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for dispensaries each. That's how much the overpayment has been. Billions of dollars of overpayment. And meanwhile, the federal government is not doing crap to inversion, exversion, avoidance. That's real tax avoidance, or at least evasion. But a COA is tax evasion now, where it's like, no, my total THC doesn't count. My Delta 9 levels are low enough. I made this other stuff in a lab to get you really high, and I don't have to pay this onerous problem tax. It's just so silly. But help them out, and we're looking forward to you helping us out in 26 when we get our first hit. Because I think Trump, if he's going to do it, just like Biden, magically a month before the midterm elections, look what I'm doing.
Yeah, but Biden also didn't pull out in time. We can't trust judgment. I think this reform's coming and it needs to be done, right? For everybody to even, the funny thing about legalization is, at least for me, why I've been championing for it is just to be a law-abiding citizen, right? To play by some bullshit rules and be left alone. Instead, we're making up hurdles. You got jackasses selling poop soup, Delta 8, calling it THC, whatever. You're stretching the planet to the limits where it should be t-shirts and biofuel and concrete. We're going to say it's hemp. And that would even improve the planet, God forbid. Instead of you making a buck, everybody can make a buck.
It's just selling drugs. Everybody can make a buck selling drugs.
I can't wait to send you guys some Southern Oregon sun-grown.
Oh, very good. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
that's one of the
people
things.
say the indoors better, but
No.
they come to Southern Oregon, it's a whole different playing field here.
Yeah, I don't. Indoor is easier to control. It doesn't have the elements, but then the outdoor stuff is fantastic. One of the problems we have here in Illinois, you're not allowed to grow outdoors. And so that's one of our, as opposed, and then in Missouri, I'm doing a procedure where there is an administrative law judge. Like in Illinois, the administrative agency makes the final decision, then you go just appeal it to the district court. And so it's interesting how some of the states are more like the federal government, where there's these administrative agencies that have their own courts that are making the decision. You're like, are you done? Okay, great. Let me just go take this to a real judge. I'm sorry, you're a real judge, Your Honor. And then you move on. But it's just fascinating to see all these types of things that we have to put up with that they don't. And if anything, a level playing field, good luck, guys. Trying to, you can no longer, your business model can't be loopholes.
Yeah. And the whole plant gets fucked in this rule process because in Illinois, I was surprised I was able to buy clones and seeds at a grow shop, not a fucking weed store, not a vape shop, but particularly a grow shop who took everything about this plant's been taking the risk, right? Risk and
Oh, no,
reward.
I've talked to that
versus-
guy and I've told him what he was doing is illegal. He doesn't care.
And again, he's taking the risk and doing it though. It's until it gets that level of some Karen with influence or whatever, right? This is how the law sometimes, which is unfortunate because we need protections. We need you to be able to go to the store, buy weed on the weekend or whatever you want to consume, and then go to work Monday and don't worry about P tests. Oh, I don't do meth. I don't worry about that. Oh, I don't do coke or whatever. But
I want to reiterate that I've been accused of exploiting loopholes here, and I want to say that none of our interpretation of the tax code is a loophole. It is a legit tax law here, and it really is the government that is actually not following the rules.
One of the videos that I'll be working on here, when I do THCA ones, they just, for whatever reason, perform really well. And so there's a case right now in Maine. Somebody got popped, and it was a DEA raid around COVID times in 2020. And so they don't test again. And then if you're yanking down plants that are live before you've harvested them, there's a high probability that they're hemp under the current law if you only do Delta 9. High probability. But then the DEA doesn't care. The DEA's, no, we're going to gas chromatograph that stuff, and then we're going to just count the THCA as Delta 9 THC. And then if you look at their opinion paper from 2024, they also say that. And is there any case law that says they're wrong? No, there is not. So stay tuned. Could be at the district court level. And then it depends on how the case shakes out. It might not get appealed. But that is currently their enforcement policy. All that stuff, that's THCA. In theory, to the DEA, that's marijuana, and they're watching you. And they are they're participating with local law enforcement. And if local law enforcement wants to do something about it, then it's all these raids that you see. The DEA had press releases in September. Operation Vape Trail. They're going after this stuff and taking it. That's now. But yet they still are doing it brazenly. And it just seems maybe you shouldn't have done that. But that's a completely different usage of the law as opposed to saying, no, this is not in the meaning of Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. It's clearly not in the meaning of, if it was in the meaning of Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, why are all these things happening? Just because it's not literally there, that's really putting form over substance. And I thought the tax code was all about the opposite of that, putting substance over form. The form says it's in Schedule 1. All the substance for this transaction says, no, it's not. Otherwise, why is that 2014 guidance there with FinCEN? Why are they telling you how to compliantly launder money? What is up with that?
Yeah, there's this strange federal legal channels, and but we still want to penalize you. It is almost like they're backhanded proto-legal apparatus for collecting tax on cannabis businesses.
Because they can't take it otherwise. I mean, unlike alcohol, which has a tax built in, unlike tobacco, which has a tax built in, now suddenly this thing doesn't have a tax built in and it's billions.
We'll get you. It's absolutely unfair. Yeah.
Oh,
Such
it
a
is.
shame.
And so that's where my Congress doesn't care. So it's going to be the laziest thing they can get done. That's what I think. And it's going to be one of those things where if they move it into Schedule 3 versus descheduling, they can say that because of the international treaties and the way the Controlled Substances Act works, we need to charge a fee, not a tax, but a fee for compliance. And that's how they get paid. Because you're not supposed to tax drugs. And there's no lane for this drug because pharmaceutical drugs that are approved through Schedule 3 typically are drugs. They aren't plants like cannabis is. And if you read the single unit or the single convention from the UN in 1960 and the Controlled Substances Act, you see where it would have to go. If it goes to Schedule 3, the government has to have the entire supply under control. And then through licensed entities where the federal government's in theory also supposed to be being a socialist actor in it and buying the whole amount that you're using. So they can swap that out and sub it out. But to do that, then what they would do is just put into place a licensing and a fee-based system where they could wet their beaks and wave goodbye to the schedule, the IRC 280E money, expand the pie because, how many people are operating out there that are actually marijuana licenses. And then you would have hopefully a new definition of hemp, but then the DEA doesn't have the money to do the enforcement either. So you kind of have to build in, and if you read Missouri's law, they're always usually pretty good at this because it's, for whatever reason, all the states are slightly different in their theories behind how they are doing their policy. And so Missouri's in it usually has how this is not going to hurt the budget toward the end of it. So they always try to generate enough fees through the system to be able to pay for the new government bureaucracy that they're creating. Pretty interesting. But, and so in Missouri, they kind of show, then we need to have these fees for this and those fees for that to be able to make sure that we're running at zero. They could do something similar at the federal level where they would set fees to pay for the regulation that they would then bring on to police the inversion of hemp, because hemp just shows up at a New York dispensary, or marijuana just disappears from Michigan and then shows up in the South as THCA flower.
I got a story of some people traveling from Washington to South Carolina, a whole family getting busted for cannabis still. Like, people who know quality want real weed, not this hemp shit. I know people say, oh, I smoke good fire hemp, but in the end, that was one small batch of a big picture. Regulation is going to be needed. It's going to be needed for the trackability, for the money, all the boring shit that you don't care about because you just want to smoke your fucking weed and be left alone.
Right on,
Hey,
man.
Yeah.
So you're going to be out at MJ Biz. I'm trepidatious to come out because I don't want to fly now. Those guys haven't gotten paid in a month, man.
Shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so how happy are they going to be to see me in another month when they haven't been paid?
Well,
Should I drive to MJBizCon? Christ, are they going to get this country back open? I don't know.
Hey, what is BizCon?
It's December 2nd, so it's in a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second.
we'll be there. We'll be there, and it would be great to see you.
Yeah, the guys are already booking their stuff. Miggy was trying to get a table, and I would rather spend the money on the community that we're going to open up a location at.
Yeah.
Because we're not open and it's expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to not be completely gray in a month here where I already had to get like $74,000 of it. Here you go. There's some money. Just go back to figuring out how to get people licenses.
It's a long process, but hey, been in over an hour, Justin. I really appreciate your time. It's been a good conversation. They can catch you at MJ Biz for your seminar.
Yeah, I'm doing the webinar on the 11th of this month, so less than 2 weeks, the week after next. I do have a speaking spot at MJ Biz, which is the day. It's actually the preliminary. I think people have to pay a little extra, and then you get an extra day or something like that. It's going to be one of those. But then my whole team, most of my team is going to be, we have a space in the exhibit hall where people can talk to us. Usually it's very confrontational. I have accounts come up and be like, how dare you not pay tax on phantom income? And why are you telling people this stuff? I've had attorneys telling me that I've got it all wrong. But here I've got Nathaniel doing this petition. And I'm like, I feel so vindicated to have such a essentially the arguments I've been espousing and yelling
Yeah.
as loud as I possibly can now in tax court, which is cool to see these specific arguments being litigated.
I mean,
I'm going to take you this. I'm going to be like, stick it in their face and not tell them.
just slap him with it.
Yeah.
That's the front.
Maybe next year we'll be able to have a booth and set up some crap. But
You guys got to do your podcast there.
I have not planned that sufficiently with Mita, and I don't know
Well,
if
it's a
Mita's
lot of-
done. Like,
lot of
it
logistics.
is, and then trying to just get your first store open is enough, and then
I think yeah, focus on that. It's
Yeah.
good. If it's done, then that's where it's at. Depending on the saturation level, depending on location, state. I'd hate to be in Michigan right now. Geez, 25%.
yeah.
Awful.
Depressed.
No, ours is weird, and we just have hemp that's open and notoriously competing
Yeah.
right against you. And I just think a lot of people, it's probably like your 25% of your underage kids that can't buy it. And then also broke people that don't want to pay it.
Yeah, no,
they
you gotta
are
focus
probably
on-
going for that. Yeah.
You'll do fine. People are looking for legitimate ways they don't want to feel ashamed to be parked in a parking lot. Shit.
I mean, yeah, it's just like,
store.
right. It is. And there's a really sad gaming lounge they can go to a couple of feet from ours, which also, for whatever reason, was stocking weed. But that's going to be one of the things that I need to reach out to some of my clients about, because we do this name that strain bit on this podcast. And so I want the name that strain to be brought to you by people. And then we have to do weird YouTube compliant strange marketing where it's, and you can get that at any licensed Illinois dispensary. Not saying exactly where you can get it, but they sell that at licensed Illinois dispensaries. Don't we have one of those? Yes, we do. Where is that? Pekin, Illinois. Oh, great. Very nice. And you have to compliantly tell people where to get it in an educational way. And so we're also burying Name That Strain 30 minutes deep into an hour-long podcast, hoping that the AI overlords don't scrape the data that far. But I have several clients that I want to call to start weaving in. The Name That Strain is brought to you by this. They are dropping this flower. You can get that at any Illinois.
Yeah. It's a good pitch, man.
Yeah.
Good voice. Yeah,
Awesome, man. Well, I look forward to seeing it. I dropped the link for the webinar everywhere. It was another slow week. That's the problem with the government shutdown, aside from all the other problems with the government shutdown. You just don't get a lot of legislative developments for the legalization of cannabis.
Yeah. No federal percent.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
See you next time, everybody.
Take care.